Imagine a military dynasty so incredibly powerful that it banks its entire civilization on one single massive apocalyptic siege.
Right. The ultimate gamble.
Exactly. And now imagine they lose.
Yeah.
What does an apex predator do the day after the end of the world? I mean, when the god they followed is dead, when the reality they were promised is just ashes, and when they are suddenly being hunted by the very forces they used to terrorize?
It's just a total, absolute psychological collapse.
Because you don't just, fall back and regroup from that. Your entire reason for existing literally evaporates.
Right. We are looking at the absolute vanguard of a rebellion here. The 16th Legion, the Sons of Horus.
The tip of the spear.
Literally the tip of the spear during the Horus Heresy. I mean, they breached the walls of Terra. They were moments away from choking out the Imperium of Man. And then suddenly, their War Master is obliterated.
And the psychic shockwave of that loss, it wasn't just, a military defeat.
No, not at all. It was the abrupt, violent termination of their entire identity.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the origins of the Black Legion today, based on this incredibly fascinating source text, The Black Legion, Architects of the Long War.
Such a great document.
It really is, because the mission today for you listening is to understand the nature of the ultimate adversary. We are looking at the architects of the Long War, the absolute existential threat to humanity in the 41st millennium.
The army of the apocalypse, essentially.
Right. And if we want to understand how an adversary becomes an apocalyptic, galaxy-ending force, we have to look at the trauma that birthed them.
Oh, absolutely. Every great empire is defined by its origins.
Right. And when you look at the historical archives of the heresy here, the origin of the Black Legion isn't built on a foundation of triumph or glorious conquest.
No, it's quite the opposite, actually.
It's built on what the archives specifically call a shattered dream.
Yeah. And that phrase is incredibly precise. I mean, a tactical defeat means you lost a battle, or maybe you lost a planet.
But you still have your command structure.
Exactly. You have your structure and your overarching purpose.
Yeah.
But a shattered dream implies that the fundamental truth of the universe you believed in has been proven false.
Right.
The Sons of Horus believed they were the chosen masters of the galaxy. Period. So when Horus fell at Terra, they didn't just perform an orderly retreat.
They completely routed.
They routed in absolute panic into the Eye of Terror. They were dropping their weapons, abandoning their allies, just completely consumed by despair.
Think about the culture shock of that retreat for a second. You have these transhuman super soldiers, right? They're genetically engineered to be fearless conquerors.
They've literally never known true existential terror.
Never. And suddenly they're running for their lives into a literal hellscape where, the laws of physics are unraveling.
Right, the warp is just tearing reality apart around them.
And worse than that, they are carrying the ultimate shame. They are the legion that failed.
Yeah, the humiliation is the crucial ingredient here. It's not just the loss, it's the shame.
Right. Let's dig into that, because what happens to the psychology of an elite military unit when their ultimate goal just slips through their fingers?
Well, once they fall back into the Eye of Terror, the other traitor legions, the world eaters, the Emperor's children, the Death Guard, they don't offer them shelter.
Right, there's no brotherhood left.
Exactly. They actually turn on them. The archives detail this brutal period known as the Legion Wars, or the Slave Wars.
Oh, wow. So they just start cannibalizing each other.
Pretty much. The Sons of Horus are hunted almost to extinction by their former allies. Their fortresses are sacked.
And they even steal the body, right?
Yes. The corpse of their father, Horus, is stolen and cloned. It's the ultimate desecration. They are reduced to these pathetic scavengers hiding in the darkest corners of the warp.
Think of this like an unstoppable historic dynasty, like a dominant empire that banks everything, all its resources and ideology, on a single final siege at Terra. And they lose.
And that kind of defeat completely shatters your identity.
It strips them of all their dignity. They went from the War Master's elite to the absolute bottom of the food chain in a matter of decades.
It's a massive fall from grace.
So my question is, how does a broken, humiliated remnant suffering from terminal despair suddenly pull itself together to become the greatest threat in the galaxy?
Well, you need a catalyst. An organic recovery is basically impossible in that state.
Because they're just too far gone.
Exactly. The culture is too toxic, the despair is way too deep. To forge a rebirth, someone has to completely destroy whatever lingering attachments the Legion has to its failed past.
Right. And the text points to one specific being responsible for this rebirth.
Yep. Ezekiel Abaddon,
First captain of the Sons of Horus, the guy who literally led the vanguard that failed at Terra.
the very same. Known to history later as the Despoiler.
But wait, if an entire legion is drowning in despair after their ultimate failure, how does one person, even a first captain, unite them?
It's a huge undertaking.
Right, because if I'm a surviving son of Horus, scraping by in the Eye of Terror, Abaddon represents everything that went wrong. Why don't I just, put a bolter round in his head the moment he tries to give an order?
That's a totally fair question.
Yeah.
And the answer is because Abaddon didn't come back asking them to follow the first captain of the Sons of Horus.
He didn't offer a return to the glory days?
Not at all. He recognized that the Sons of Horus were dead. He realized that Horus himself was a failure.
Oh, wow. So he completely throws Horus under the bus.
Completely. The archives point to this profound realization Abaddon had. He saw that Horus allowed himself to become a puppet of the Chaos Gods.
Right.
Horus let his own ego and the corruption of the warp blind him to the actual mechanics of winning the war. So Abaddon returned from this period of self-imposed exile and initiated what the text calls a bitter rebirth.
A bitter rebirth. I love that phrasing, meaning he basically weaponized their trauma.
He absolutely did. He forced
Yes.
them to confront it. He didn't soothe their egos or give them a pep
You
talk.
didn't say, oh, we'll get him next time.
Exactly. He took the ashes of that shattered dream and built something entirely devoid of nostalgia. He commanded them to paint their sea green armor black.
The black of mourning.
Mourning and shame. He scrubbed the name Sons of Horus from their heraldry entirely. He made them the Black Legion.
So he essentially killed their previous identity before their enemies could finish the job.
That's a great way to put it.
By painting the armor black, he's basically saying, the legion you loved is dead. You are disgraced.
Yeah.
But if you embrace that disgrace, if you own the failure of Terra, nobody can ever use it against you again.
Exactly. He turned Horus from a martyr into a cautionary tale. I mean, he even led a strike force to destroy the cloned body of Horus.
Wait, he destroyed the clone of his own Primarch.
He did. He severed their final physical tie to their genetic father.
That is an unthinkable act of patricide in Astartes culture, isn't it?
It is absolute heresy to them.
Yeah.
But it was necessary. Abaddon was sending a very clear message that we are no longer fighting for the legacy of a dead man who failed us.
We're fighting for ourselves now.
Right. We are fighting for our own vengeance. The text specifically notes they were reshaped into the instrument of Abaddon the Despoiler's will.
Okay, but does forging a bitter rebirth rely strictly on raw power and intimidation like that? I mean, sheer willpower and a brutal rebranding exercise only get you so far, right?
Right. You can't just scare people into a 10,000-year campaign.
Exactly. You can unite a bunch of desperate warlords through a dramatic gesture like destroying a clone of your Primarch, but how do you sustain that?
You have to give them a completely new vision.
Right, if the Black Legion is going to be the ultimate threat, they can't just be a localized band of angry scavengers. Did Abaddon have to offer them a radical new vision to keep them from turning on each other?
Yes, and that radical vision is exactly what Abaddon provided. He didn't promise them a quick victory. He fundamentally shifted their entire concept of time and war.
And this brings us to the core philosophy, doesn't it?
It does. Abaddon realized that the heresy failed because it was treated as a singular, decisive thrust.
Like a gambler putting everything on red.
Exactly. It was a massive gamble. You roll the dice at Terra, and if you lose, the game is over. So Abaddon replaced that gambler's mindset with an unwavering commitment to what the text calls the Long War.
Of Long War, which is a staggering 10,000-year campaign of pure, unadulterated attrition dedicated to overthrowing the Imperium of Man.
It is massive. It completely alters their psychology. When you commit to a 10,000-year war, the urgency that causes panic and, route tactics, it just vanishes.
I really want to push back on the sheer scale of this timeline for a second, because 10,000 years is virtually incomprehensible to us.
Oh, it's impossible for a human mind to really grasp.
Right. Most human institutions don't last a fraction of that time. I'm struggling to wrap my head around a crusade that outlives generations by millennia.
Yeah, it's a huge shift in scale.
How does a faction representing chaos, which is literal anarchy, maintain absolute, unwavering focus for 10 millennia without tearing itself apart?
Well, you have to think about the physical and temporal reality of the warp, first of all.
Okay, right. Time works differently there.
Exactly. Some of these legionaries experience time differently. For some of them, the Siege of Terra was subjective centuries ago.
And for others.
For others, it literally feels like it was last month.
Wow. That's a mind-bending temporal distortion.
It is. But structurally, Abaddon keeps them motivated by entirely unburdening the Legion from the niche for immediate gratification.
Oh, I see.
That is the genius of the Long War philosophy.
Yeah.
If you lose a fleet, or if a crusade stalls, or if you spend 300 years taking a single star system only to lose it in a week,
It doesn't actually matter.
it does not matter. The Long War is not about holding territory in the short term.
Yeah.
It is an unending war of attrition about bleeding the Imperium dry over millennia.
So it removes the sting of temporary defeat.
Completely.
Yeah.
If you expect the war to last 10,000 years, a century of setbacks is just a rounding error in your logistical timeline.
It reframes failure as just another step in the process. That's incredibly resilient.
It's the ultimate resilience.
But we still have to address the elephant in the room regarding the Black Legion's philosophy.
Chaos undivided.
Chaos undivided. The archives explicitly state they fight for chaos undivided. But let's look at the mechanics of that, because chaos, by definition, is self-destructive.
Oh, absolutely. The gods hate each other.
Right. The Chaos Gods, Khorne, Sianch, Nurgle, Slaanesh, they hate each other just as much, if not more, than they hate the Imperium.
They're constantly fighting a great game against one another.
Exactly. Their followers are constantly slaughtering one another in the Eye of Terror. So how does Abaddon physically force followers of rival, diametrically opposed gods to cooperate in a warband without them just, gutting each other on the way to the battlefield?
This is where Abaddon's sheer operational brilliance outshines even Horus.
Really? More than the original War Master?
Yes, because Horus let the gods possess him. Abaddon uses the gods as a tool.
So he's managing them.
Exactly. Chaos Undivided isn't a peace treaty between the gods. It's a localized, highly managed weaponization of their mutual hatred.
So he's essentially pointing all that hatred in one direction.
Right. Abaddon doesn't demand that a Khornid Berserker and a Slaaneshi Sorcerer actually like each other or get along.
That would be impossible.
It would. He simply provides a target, the Imperium, that is so massive and so deeply entrenched that they have to momentarily align their vectors of violence to bring it down.
He's playing them against each other.
Constantly.
Like, if Khorne tries to take total control of Abaddon or the Legion, does Abaddon just pivot and align slightly with Siege?
Precisely. He ensures the gods constantly check and balance each other's influence over him. He refuses to kneel to any single patron.
And that independence is what gives him power.
Yes. By maintaining his independence, he acts as the focal point. The gods grant him blessings because he is literally the only mortal capable of delivering the destruction of the Emperor.
Which is the one goal they all actually share.
Right, and the warbands fall in line because Abaddon controls the logistics. He controls the navigation out of the Eye of Terror and the ultimate overarching strategy.
Okay, so what happens if a warband leader decides he wants to fight for his specific god's glory instead of the Long War?
Abaddon doesn't just reprimand him. He annihilates him.
Brutal.
And usually, he uses a rival warband to do it.
Wow. So the mission is the glue, but the threat of Abaddon's internal policing is the nail holding it all together.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
Which brings up a massive logistical problem in my mind. Because your skepticism earlier is completely valid. Managing chaos over 10 millennia requires an operational structure that seems entirely contradictory to the word itself.
Logistics are the nightmare of any army, let alone a chaos army.
Right. A philosophy of vengeance and a carefully balanced religious framework doesn't feed troops. It doesn't rearm void ships. It doesn't forge bolter shells.
No, you need actual infrastructure for that.
So if they are fighting a war for 10 millennia from inside a reality-bending hellscape, how are they physically structuring this military to survive? The source reveals a fascinating paradox here.
Yeah, it notes they are the largest and most organized of the traitor legions.
Organized being the key word there. But it also explicitly states they are not a monolithic force.
And that distinction is everything. Largest and most organized, but not monolithic.
What does that actually look like in practice? Because a monolithic legion, like the Iron Warriors or the Death Guard, they have a very rigid top-down hierarchy, right?
Right, they have a specific way of waging war. Siege warfare for the Iron Warriors, or biological warfare for the Death Guard.
It's effective, but it's brittle.
Exactly. If you figure out their core doctrine, you can counter it.
Mm-hmm.
But Abaddon saw how the monolithic structure of the old legions failed.
Because if the head is cut off, the body dies.
Just like what happened to the Matera. So by intentionally designing the Black Legion to not be monolithic, He created a decentralized, resilient system.
Okay, so they aren't just a mindless swarm throwing themselves at the gates.
Not at all.
It sounds more like a highly adaptable, decentralized corporate conglomerate or like a massive insurgent network.
That's exactly how they operate. The Black Legion is structured as the legions of the War Master. It's a vast network of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of distinct warbands.
They have different branches and tactics, but they all report to the same board of directors.
Right, you have spearheads of Terminators in one place, fleets of Corsairs in another, cultist insurgencies, demon-binding sorcerer covens.
And they're all operating independently.
Yes, they operate independently, scavenging, raiding, building alliances with the Dark Mechanicum to secure those munitions and ships you mentioned earlier.
That makes them incredibly hard to predict or wipe out. I mean, think of it like a Hydra, but a highly strategic one.
A very smart Hydra.
Right. If the Imperium destroys a Black Legion warband operating in the Ultima Segmentum, they haven't crippled the Black Legion at all. They've just severed one head.
And meanwhile, 3 other warbands are hitting supply lines in the Segmentum Solar.
Because they encourage diverse tactics and operational flexibility.
Exactly, while remaining fiercely loyal to Abaddon's overarching goal. They all ultimately report to the Ezekarian Abaddon's inner circle, and they all serve the strategic goals of the Long War.
It creates an absolute nightmare for Imperial strategists, doesn't it?
It's impossible to predict. You cannot anticipate the Black Legion's movements based on standard military doctrine.
Which brings us to their battlefield doctrine. The archives describe their approach as the art of the cunning assault.
And it is exactly this adaptability, this rejection of mindless aggression in favor of strategy that makes them so terrifying.
Let's really break down the mechanics of a cunning assault. Because usually when people think of Chaos Space Marines, they just picture screaming berserkers charging mindlessly into heavy bolter fire.
And that is the propaganda the Imperium feeds its citizens.
Right, it makes them seem like wild animals.
But it is entirely inaccurate regarding the Black Legion. A cunning assault means they leverage every single asymmetrical advantage they have before a single Astartes even boots up his power armor.
Okay, so they aren't going to waste centuries-old veterans in a frontal trench assault if they don't have to.
Absolutely not. Space Marines are rare and valuable resources. Before the Black Legion fleet even translates in system, they have spent decades, sometimes centuries, seeding cults on the target world.
Wow. Just patiently waiting.
Patiently corrupting the local planetary governors. They sabotage the orbital defense grids using scrap code viruses.
So they're fighting an information and cyber war before the physical war even starts.
Exactly. When the invasion actually begins, it isn't a blunt force strike. The planet's defenses just tear themselves apart from the inside.
Right.
Cultists rise up in the hives, forcing the planetary defense force to fight in the streets. Then sorcerers rip open the veil, summoning demonic incursions to spread terror and tie up the elite defenders.
And only then. Only when the command structure is completely blind, when the supply lines are burning, and when the defenders are exhausted and terrified.
That's when they strike.
Only then does the Black Legion deploy their Astartes. The Terminators just teleport directly into the shattered command bunkers to finish the job.
It's completely surgical. It is the absolute rejection of mindless aggression.
It's terrifyingly efficient.
And they are fluid. If infiltration fails, they will use orbital bombardment. If a siege stalls, they will unleash biological weapons.
They just analyze the specific weaknesses of a target and tailor the assault to exploit them perfectly.
They aren't rigid, they are totally fluid.
And that fluidity, that calculated approach to warfare, leads us to the text's final and honestly most chilling revelation.
Yeah, the ultimate horror.
The true terror of the Black Legion isn't their weaponry. It isn't their size, or even the blessings of the Chaos Gods.
No, it's their terrifying capacity to learn, evolve, while playing the longest game imaginable.
The archives explicitly state that the Black Legion is the embodiment of the Imperium's greatest fear, the triumph of chaos through cold, calculated purpose.
Cold, calculated purpose. That phrase alone just shatters the illusion that chaos is a mindless, destructive force.
Right, because the common assumption is that it's just a raging fire you can simply wait out.
Exactly. A fire eventually burns through its fuel and dies. But the Black Legion is an entity that builds its own fuel source.
The author draws such a sharp contrast here. The ultimate horror is a villain who is patient. A villain who actually analyzes their past failures, like the failure at Terra, and ensures they never happen again.
They have spent 10,000 years learning from the mistakes of their forebears.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of that evolution, because the Imperium they are fighting, by its very nature, is completely stagnant.
Oh, the Imperium is degrading, if anything.
Right. The Imperium forgets technology, they rely on religious dogma, they fight exactly the same way they fought 5,000 years ago.
But the Black Legion treats their entire history as a curriculum. They look back at the failure of Terra, and they treat it as a massive data point.
Can we look at the Black Crusades as an example of this?
Yes, that is the perfect example. Look at the structure of the Black Crusades. Historically, Imperial scholars viewed the first 12 Black Crusades as failures because Abaddon didn't reach Terra.
Right, he would surge out of the Eye of Terror, cause massive devastation, and eventually be pushed back by the combined might of the Imperium.
And the Imperium celebrated every single one of these as a massive victory.
But they weren't failures at all, were they?
Not in the slightest. The text implies the Black Crusades were iterative warfare. Abaddon wasn't trying to reach Terra in the Second Crusade or the Seventh or the 10th.
So what was he doing? Just probing?
He was testing weaknesses. He was securing ancient artifacts. He was destroying specific planetary pylons that held the warp at bay.
Wow.
Every single crusade achieved a very specific, calculated objective that laid the groundwork for the next one.
He was systematically dismantling the structural integrity of the Imperium's defenses over millennia?
Exactly. While the Imperium foolishly believed they were just repelling random, hateful raids, he was playing 4D chess.
It's the difference between fighting a wild animal and fighting a supercomputer that hates you.
That's exactly it.
I mean, a wild animal, even a massive, terrifying one, is predictable, right? It relies on instinct. If you build a strong enough cage, you can trap it.
You can manage an animal.
But a supercomputer running 10,000 years of combat simulations, constantly updating its tactics based on every single engagement, intentionally probing your defenses to catalog your reaction times.
Yeah.
How do you fight that?
You can't. Not through standard attrition, anyway. The horror of the Black Legion isn't just their malice. It is their sheer, undeniable competence.
Competence is a scary word when applied to chaos.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when they finally launched the 13th Black Crusade, they didn't just break the Cadian Gate, which was the Imperium's greatest fortress world. They physically tore the galaxy in half.
Right, the Great Rift. They proved that the 10,000-year-long game was real.
They are an army of conquest, bringing an agonizing end to humanity through meticulous planning.
Wait, if the Black Legion has spent 10,000 years doing nothing but patiently learning from their mistakes and evolving, what does that say about the Imperium they are fighting?
It paints a very grim picture for humanity.
If the Imperium is just desperately holding the line, relying on stagnant dogma, aren't they facing a foe that literally gets smarter and more adaptable every single day?
Yes. The math eventually works against humanity.
It sounds less like a war and more like a ticking clock. The calculated purpose implies an absolute inevitability.
Which is exactly why they are the greatest threat to humanity's existence in the 41st millennium.
Okay, so just to briefly recap the journey of this deep dive today, we started with the shattered dream of the Sons of Horus at Terra.
The ultimate psychological collapse.
Right. We watched Ezekiel Abaddon forge a bitter rebirth from the ashes, shedding their old identity to weaponize their despair.
Creating the Black Legion.
And we saw how an incomprehensible 10,000-year commitment to the Long War transformed them into this terrifyingly organized, adaptable, and calculating army of
It's
conquest.
just quite the transformation.
It is. But what's the big takeaway here for you, the listener?
Well, while this is obviously a deep dive into the grim darkness of a fictional 41st millennium, the core theme here is a masterclass in resilience and long-term strategic thinking.
It really is.
It shows how the greatest threats, or the most formidable competitors in any field, are those who don't let a massive failure destroy them.
They don't just wallow in the defeat.
Exactly. Instead, they use it as a curriculum to learn, adapt, and play the long game. The Black Legion survived because they evolved.
They took the worst defeat in galactic history and used it as the foundation to build an apocalyptic machine.
The ultimate comeback story, if a very dark one.
Right. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder on your own. Something drawn directly from the implications of this text.
Oh, this is the paradox, isn't it?
Yes. The source material makes it very clear that the Black Legion's entire identity, their whole existence, is built exclusively on the concept of the Long War and avenging their shattered dream.
The mission is the only thing keeping chaos undivided from fracturing.
Exactly. So, if they actually succeed in their 10,000-year crusade, If they finally storm Terra, tear down the Imperium, and claim the galaxy for chaos, what happens to them then?
What's left to fight?
Can an army entirely defined by a bitter eternal war even survive its own victory? Or would the sheer nature of chaos immediately turn the Black Legion inward, ensuring that the ultimate triumph of chaos would ultimately be the end of the Black Legion itself?
It forces you to wonder if a weapon forged only for vengeance can ever exist without a target.
A terrifying thought to leave on. That's the Black Legion for you, Architects of the Long War. Thanks for diving into the darkness with us today.